Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be all the books that I've read in the months of October and November. I think it's a total of 8 books. So let's get started. So during the month of October, I read a total of 4 books, and they were all fantasy reads because I don't know why, but October just screams like a fantasy month. Like, if you are not reading fantasy books during the fall, what are you doing? So the first book I read in October was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maurer, I want to say, yeah. And this is a fantasy romance, workplace romance. It's basically about Evie Sage. She just got fired from her job and she's looking for a new one, but the job market in her kingdom isn't looking too hot, and her family really needs the money. So when the villain propositions her with an assistant position, she has no choice but to take it, and it just kind of follows along her quirky work life. It has a mystery subplot. It's very comedic. I would say it's a comedic fantasy. It's not very high stakes in my personal opinion. I rated this book a 2.5. It was not my cup of tea. The humor just landed very, very flat for me. It just felt very cringy. I wasn't in love with Evie. Her inner monologue would make me angry at times, and I don't think it's her fault. It's just, I am not a person who enjoys like the quirky girl trope. I just find it very annoying, very fast. However, the one saving grace for this book was the mystery subplot and the villain. I really enjoyed his character. He was so funny. He had this like kind of dry sense of humor. However, even though it is dual POV, his POV is very sparse. It's mainly Evie's POV, and I feel like if we had more of an equal balance, maybe I would have liked this book more. But yeah. Personally, I don't think I will be continuing with this series, but yeah. So moving on to a more positive note, the second book I read was Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. This is in the same universe as The Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes of Star-Cursed King, that series. However, this is technically a standalone, so you don't have to read that series to understand what's going on in this book. However, I would highly recommend that you read that series first before jumping into this book, just because there's a lot of world building and history and lore that you get in that book that isn't really talked about, and I feel like it could get confusing, especially if you are new to fantasy. So this book is about Selena, and she is part of this group of worshippers for the goddess of chaos. And part of their worship is that they give up their eyesight to the goddess and then are gifted this like sixth sense. So they're blind, but they're not really blind because they see the world in like a different system than we do. And she is then tasked to murder, I think is how you say his name is like Atreus? I don't know. But she is tasked to murder the Vampire Conqueror, and yeah, love it. This book was a 4 out of 5. It has all the good tropes. It is forbidden love, enemies to lovers, she's sent to unalive him, slow burn. It's high stakes fantasy with a lot of political intrigue. Honestly, what did the book for me was the political high stakes fantasy that was like in this book. That's like what really got me into it. The romance is mainly just the subplot, I want to say, but the slow burn does hit. Highly recommend. I absolutely love Carissa Broadbent's writing style. It's so fast paced, it's easy to read, easy to understand. Highly recommend. So the next book I read was probably my favorite out of the entire month, and that was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So this is about a dystopian like kingdom essentially that has elites and ordinaries. The elites have all these different kind of like magical powers, whereas the ordinaries don't. And it is basically illegal to not have powers or else you'll be unalived. And Peyton has been living a lie her entire life. She is an ordinary, posing as an elite, and she's been living on the down low as a thief for about her whole teenage life until one day she unknowingly saves Prince Kai, the future executioner, who basically one day his job will be to get rid of people like Peyton who don't have powers. And basically her saving him changed the whole entire like direction of her life. It kind of like put her in this spotlight that she really did not want to be in, and she was forced to enter this high stakes competition between all these different elites, and it's televised. It's like this big like spectacle thing, very much giving like Hunger Games, and it's just so good. This book was a 5-star read for me. The enemies to lovers, the forbidden love, the slow burn of it all, just like I ate it up and devoured it. And this book is technically YA. There is no spice whatsoever, but I was not like, oh my gosh, I wish there was spice. I did not miss it one bit. I actually love the fact that it is YA because then everyone can enjoy this kind of book. It's just so good. If you like books like Red Queen and The Serpent and the Wings of Night and Hunger Games, you will like this book. It's so good. Please read this book. So the fourth and final book I read in October was A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. This is the third and final book of the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. It was probably one of my most anticipated reads of 2023 as well. I was just waiting and hoping for this book to come out. I was counting down the days, and this series is such a magical feeling series. I highly recommend it. It's in the same universe as the Caraval trilogy. However, you do not need to read that trilogy to understand what happens. I personally loved that trilogy as well and would recommend reading that before this series, but you don't have to, especially if it doesn't like pique your interest. But I just loved both of the characters in all these books that it just holds such a special place in my heart. This book had such mixed reviews, and I feel like that happens a lot with the final book of series because there's just room for disappointment because it's ending. However, I was not disappointed. This book was a 4.5 for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like it wrapped up the series in such a great way that allows the readers to make different analogies and concepts and just like really play around with what they think happened, what things mean. And I think that's what Stephanie Garber really wanted. I think she wanted it to be open for interpretation. And I thoroughly enjoy that because I feel like when you have set answers, it takes away that like magical feeling that is fantasy. And this series feels more like a fairy tale than like a high stakes fantasy. It's very much fairy tale-esque. It's very magical. There's like some dark aspects to it, which I thoroughly liked. I feel like it made it a little bit more mature and adult, especially for a YA fantasy book. There were some little like sprinkles of maybe there being another series coming out that is in the same universe. I'm really hoping that there is, just because I would love to see where it goes. If you read all three of the like, because there's different endings for each different book that there is, and I love that. Again, the whole like idea that it's open to interpretation is amazing. Okay, now I'm just rambling. Okay, this is a 4.5. I highly recommend if you want a new like magical fairy tale-esque fantasy. It's very fast-paced, it's fun, it's fresh. Check it out. So moving on to the month of November, it was definitely a romance-heavy month. I feel like because October was just full of fantasy reads, I really wanted to balance it out with some fun and cute romances. So I read a total of 4 books during November, so let's get started. So the first book I read in November was Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is the second book of the Maple Hill series, and it's an interconnected standalone series. So you technically don't have to read them in order or even read the first book to read this one. But it's about Russ and Aurora, and they have a one-night stand at this like end of the year school party, and they leave thinking that they're never gonna see each other again, that the window has passed. But it turns out they're both camp counselors at the same summer camp. So, it is workplace romance, it is summer romance. They are kind of forbidden love because there's a no fraternization rule. It is forbidden to date your coworkers. Russ is a very shy guy. Aurora is an outgoing girl, so that's kind of like a trope as well. And I just love Russ. He's very much like boy next door, very boy obsessed. Just chef's kiss. He was a total 180 from Nathan Hawkins from the first book, who was very outgoing and very jockish. He's very shy and reserved and just like a cutie patootie. And the icing on the cake is that there's no third act breakup. No third act breakup. And that just made it for me. I rated this book a 4 out of 5. Icebreaker is still my favorite. I just loved it so much. Some things that I missed in this book that we got from the first one is just the aspect of the friend group. Because it took place in the summer away from like the college campus, we kind of miss out on those friend dynamics and those relationships. Technically, there's like a new friend group, so you kind of get that found family aspect, but it just doesn't hit as hard. But nonetheless, I still really enjoyed it. I think it was such a nice change of pace from the first book because that can get very repetitive. So, yeah. Highly recommend. So the next book I read in November was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This was actually her first ever YA novel, and it did not disappoint. It's about Mallory Greenleaf, who used to love playing chess, and it basically consumed her life. She was basically a child prodigy. However, now she refuses to play because of something that happened in her past. It was very traumatic, but one day she decides to enter this like charity tournament, and she ends up defeating the world champion Nolan Sawyer. So this was like a phenomenon. It was a media like tizzy, things like that. She's offered a chess internship, and despite her strained relationship with the sport, she decides to accept because her family is just struggling financially, and this internship could open a lot of doors for her and allow her to have some money and be able to provide for her family. I loved this book. This book made me giddy, it made me giggle, and I just ate it up. It was a 4.5. I just loved it so much. I literally could not put it down. I finished it in one sitting. I would say this book reminds me more of a coming of age story than a romance, just because the romance takes kind of a back seat compared to Mallory's character development and what she's going through. However, with that being said, I still ate up the romance. I love Nolan Sawyer so much. He's the definition of boy obsessed, and I love it. He just made the book for me. I wish we got his POV because I would have literally died. I probably would have given the book 5 stars if we had his POV. But I really liked that the book focused on Mallory though, so who knows. I think if you like the book, if you like the show Queen's Gambit, you will like this book because Ali Hazelwood took something that is so boring in my head. Like, I do not find chess entertaining at all, but she made it so entertaining. So, pick this book up. It's such a short, cute read. I normally don't read YA romances, but this book did not read like a YA. For anything, I feel like it's a new adult romance that's closed door. There's no spice. Because the dialogue was just so mature. It kind of felt like the dialogue she does in her adult books. Yeah. So the next book I read was Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. This is the first book of the Lakefront Billionaires, and we actually see some breadcrumbs of these characters in the final offer, which is the third book of the Dreamland Billionaire series, and I loved it. This book is about Julian and Dahlia. Julian is a billionaire. He owns a very successful construction company that makes luxury houses. He was also one of the founders of Zillow in this universe. And Dahlia is what is it called? She's a designer. She does interior design. She has her own fixer-upper show. And she returns to her hometown because of her broken engagement. She just really wants to focus on her mental health and get her ducks in a row. But Julian has other plans. He sees this as his opportunity to win her back. He lost her all those years ago, and he is not going to let this opportunity pass him up. And I just loved it. I just loved it so much. It's small town. It's kind of friends to lovers, but there's also a sense of like rivalry between them. I just loved it. I just loved it. It's so cute. I loved the mental health aspect of this book. I feel like Lauren Asher always does a great job of that. I rated this book a 4 out of 5. I definitely can't wait for the second book. Yeah. If you like shows like Fixer Upper, you'll like this book, okay? So the fourth and final book I read in November was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is a STEM adult romance. It is academic rivals to lovers. It's slow burn, boy falls first. And it's about Elsie Hanaway. She is a theoretical physicist and a chronic people pleaser. And because a job in academia does not pay well, she fake dates people on the side for money. And so that's how she met Jack. She actually fake dates his brother. And so when she went to go interview for this job, and he was one of the interviewers, he was like, "Why are you here? You are supposed to be a librarian. Are you lying to my brother? What are you doing?" And just a whole bunch of chaos ensues because of that. Jack is he's an experiential physicist, and there's already kind of like an academic rivalry between theoretical and experimental physicists. So yeah, I really liked this book. I ended up rating it a 4 out of 5. I feel like I would have rated it higher if the third act breakup didn't irritate me so much. Maybe it's because I'm personally not a STEM girly, so I don't quite understand the inner workings of the environment that these people are in, so it just did not land. I was kind of like, this is dumb, just get over it, just talk it out, because you're not defined by your career, but whatever. I really liked that the main female character was diabetic. I really liked that representation. I thought it was very cool and intriguing to learn about just the process of everything. So yeah, highly recommend. I love Ali Hazelwood and her work. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more videos. I am about to enter winter break, so I have a lot of fun videos planned. I really want to post consistently while I'm on winter break. So make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on all those fun videos. I also have a Bookstagram, currently .overbooked. I actually recently met 10,000 followers on my Booksta, so I'm doing a giveaway which should be up by the time this video is uploaded. So if you want to enter my giveaway, make sure to go check out my Bookstagram, currently .overbooked. It is always linked in the description. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.